Hi, my name is Bob Hill, and I'm the president of the Church of Scientology Mission of Riverdale at 308 Broadview Avenue in Toronto, Ontario. Today is Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. Now today I thought I'd bring up something that would kind of put this Thanksgiving in perspective, and maybe it's something you could use as a tool to better your conditions in life, and as it is Thanksgiving, to give some Thanksgiving to others. What I'm talking about is a thing called kindness. So there's hardly one of us who hasn't asked himself the question, isn't it better to be mean? Almost every one of us has had the feeling that we were a bit soft. We didn't like flying into the teeth of some human being and making him or her feel bad. We told ourselves we ought to be tougher. We ought to put up a better front. We ought to know when to snarl, know when to show the sharpened tooth. And probably we walked away occasionally after we loaned somebody some money or something of the sort and said, when am I going to learn to be tough? When am I going to learn to be hard-boiled? And just stand right up to that little kid and say, no. When am I going to learn this? The motto behind this is, isn't it better to be mean occasionally? Sadly, it's not. When am I going to stop being soft and be a hard, forthright, capable of saying no person? I would be a much better manager. I would be a much better person if I knew when I could come down with a slight slam. If I could just know occasionally when I should be mean. And if I was willing to be mean, wouldn't that be right? I should be able to just take the person out there and just sweep them aside. Isn't there some rightness in being tough? One can spot times when he knows he or she should have been tougher. He's sure of it. But, sorry to say, a highly informative series of Scientology spiritual counseling procedures demonstrates that the person who's willing to confront other things doesn't ever have to say no. He doesn't ever have to be mean. He doesn't ever have to be tough at all. And by confront things, we mean face things without flinching or avoiding, or face them without feeling all this emotion or having all these ideas that how bad it is and that you're not going to make it. Just face it. Be there comfortably. Trust me, the thing won't harm you. You just confront it. You face it with no predetermined thought about it. When you look at the person or the object, don't think, oh, well, that's not going to work or this isn't going to happen. These are all your own ideas and thoughts. Remove them from the equation and just confront. It is perfectly all right to be nice to people. It isn't a weakness at all. As a matter of fact, if you aren't, you're in the soup. Now that you can look at that and say, well, some guys, they got to yell and scream and, they got to have a lot of thought into everything and worry about it. Well, I can tell you that's not the way to operate. It's incorrect. It's better for you to be nice. It's not a weakness at all. If I had a problem right now, let's say I had some problem nagging me. If I just went out and walked around and I was nice to people for a half hour, I'll bet you $1,000 that problem wouldn't be nagging me any longer. Simply because I started to confront. And as I was walking, I probably came up with a solution to my problem. But I didn't really put all my attention on that weakness of mine or that, thing. So as a matter of fact, if you aren't willing to be nice, you're in the soup. You could say that the only times for which you are suffering are those times when you weren't nice enough, when you weren't kind enough, and when you weren't unmean enough. Those are the only times from which you're really suffering. It is not true that being mean gets anybody ahead any place. That's really factual. I mean, just look at it. What happens to mean people? They don't really go anywhere in life. When you deny your fellow man, so when you're being mean to him, you say be mean, you say be very positive. The truth of the matter is that you're denying him communication, one way or the other. Now, if you have lots of communication going on around you, and you're kind, and you have all those lines happening, you'll never get into trouble. You're gonna, like if you fall on your face, let's say you don't have a job and you fall on your face. Well, okay, you got all kinds of communication lines and you've been nice on those lines. Guess what? You won't have a lot of trouble having to find out how to handle it. There will always be other communication lines for you to help you. The only thing you should ever be tough about is insisting the other fellow ought to stand on his own feet too. And the only way you'll ever communicate that to him is to communicate it to him in a very nice way. Then he's liable to receive it. Being mean is simply going out of communication with things. The individual who is kind, who is decent, and who does communicate, and who is nice, and who isn't averse to conversation and saying this and doing that, who is tolerant, we find gets along beautifully. But the fellow who's mean and ornery and who's cutting communication all the way along the line, we find he's in the soup. Therefore, a standard of optimum human performance would be measured on the basis of human kindness as a high and human meanness as a low. So really keep that in perspective. If you practice kindness, you will find no matter how you feel about your life, no matter how you feel it's going, your life will improve and you'll move in a good direction. So we know the answer at last to whether you should have been mean all those times or whether you should have been more kind. You should have been more kind. So there you go. And that's my message to you for this Thanksgiving. You can, at the end of this, you'll see an email address across the screen. You can pick up books, but please practice kindness. It'll work. You'll find out things will go better around you. Life situations will dissolve. You'll do better. That's to you from Scientology. Thank you.